The political gloves are officially off in Washington. A sitting senator is now suing a cabinet-level official, and the implications are explosive. Senator Mark Kelly has filed a lawsuit against Secretary Pete Hegseth, and depending on what comes out in discovery, this case could crack open a much bigger scandal than the media wants to admit.
I didn't expect that I would ever find myself here as a U.S. Senator having filed a lawsuit against a Secretary of Defense. When I graduated from the United States Merchant Marine Academy in 1986 and was commissioned into the United States Navy as an ensign, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have upheld that oath every single day since. I upheld it on the second night of Operation Desert Storm, when a Russian-made SA-6 surface-to-air missile locked onto my airplane while I was on a mission to bomb an airfield in southern Iraq and made a last-ditch maneuver. The missile exploded above us, and I delivered the bombs on target. I upheld my oath as a test pilot, logging hundreds of flight hours, pushing aircraft to the limits to make sure that our pilots had the best aircraft and systems to use in combat. And I upheld my oath when my service took me to NASA, where I went into space 4 times, where I was honored to command 2 space shuttle missions, and where I was also the first astronaut on the scene in East Texas after Space Shuttle Columbia exploded during re-entry. And I had to recover the bodies of my friends and astronaut classmates. And I have upheld my oath here in the United States Senate, a place I never expected to find myself in, because my wife, Gabby, was always the elected official in our family. If she had never been shot in the head, it probably would be here, she would be here in this chamber, and not me. But I love this country, and I felt that I had an obligation to continue my public service in a way that I never expected. And so, I've upheld my oath in this job too, because I take seriously my duty to protect the Constitution for all Americans. I just never expected that I would have to protect the rule of law against a Secretary of Defense. Pete Hegseth is now coming after what I earned through my 25 years of military service in violation of my rights as an American and as a retired veteran and as a United States Senator whose job it is to hold this and any administration accountable. He doesn't like what I said, and so he is trying to censure and demote me. And let's talk for just a second about what it is that I said that he decided to censure me over, according to his letter. First, that I simply restated the law, that service members must refuse illegal orders. Somehow, restating the law is now against the law, according to Pete Hegseth. This isn't new. It's something every recruit is taught. It's something that Pete Hegseth himself has said repeatedly, including specifically about this president and Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump. Second, that I criticized him for firing admirals and generals, and that this administration is surrounding themselves with a bunch of yes men. Let me repeat it here right now. It is bad for our national security that Pete Hegseth fired admirals and generals because of who they are. And a bunch of yes men? Well, that's bad for any organization. Lastly, he is censuring me because I've raised concerns about his actions and military operations. Well, that's my job. I have every right to say these things as an American, as a retired service member, and as a U.S. Senator, and especially as a member of the Armed Services Committee whose duty it is to provide oversight over the Department of Defense. Pete Hegseth's unconstitutional crusade against me sends a chilling message to every retired member of the military. If you speak out and say something that the President and Secretary of Defense doesn't like, you will be censured, threatened with demotion, or even prosecuted. Every service member knows that military rank is earned, it's not given. It's earned through the risks you take, the sacrifices you and your family make, the leadership you display, and the respect you earn from the superiors who recommend you for promotion. After my 25 years of service, I earned my rank as a captain in the United States Navy. Now, Pete Hegseth wants even our longest-serving military veterans to live with the constant threat that they could be deprived of their rank and retirement pay years or even decades after they leave the military just because he or another Secretary of Defense or a president doesn't like what they've said. If Pete Hegseth succeeds in silencing me, then he and every other Secretary of Defense who comes after him will have license to punish any retired veteran of any political persuasion for the things that they say. And by that logic, a 100-year-old World War II veteran could be hauled in and censured or court-martialed because he says something that Pete Hegseth disagrees with. That's wrong. It's not the way things work in the United States of America, and I will not stand for it. Because our freedom of speech, the separation of powers, and due process are not just words on a page. They are core principles of our democracy. When we say we have an obligation to protect and defend the Constitution, this is exactly what we are all talking about. It's this. Because that oath that I spoke about earlier, it should sound very familiar to other folks in this room, because it is the same one that every member of the United States Senate has taken. For 250 years, we have been the greatest democracy the world has ever seen because patriotic Americans have been willing to stand up for not just their own rights, but for the rights of all of our fellow citizens. That continued resolve is what will decide if our democracy lasts another 250 years. That's why today, I filed a lawsuit against the Secretary of Defense to protect my rights, the rights of retired veterans, and the rights of all Americans. I've never backed down from a fight for our country, and I'm not going to back down from this one. Thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor.
Because Jim Jordan didn't come to ask polite questions. He came to dismantle the foundation of the 6th of January narrative, and he did it by zeroing in on one name, Cassidy Hutchinson. Jordan opens with a blunt question that instantly puts Jack Smith on defense. Is Cassidy Hutchinson a liar? No warm-up, no hedging, just straight to the point. Jordan reminds viewers that Hutchinson wasn't just a witness. She was the star witness of the 6th of January committee, the centerpiece of a primetime, nationally televised hearing. A hearing so choreographed, Jordan notes, that Democrats literally hired a former ABC News executive to produce it. And then comes the story everyone remembers. The claim that President Trump lunged across the backseat of the presidential vehicle, grabbed the steering wheel, and tried to force his way to the Capitol. A moment that dominated headlines. A moment used to shock the country. A moment used to justify everything that followed. So Jordan asks the obvious question. Was it true? Jack Smith admits something crucial. Hutchinson didn't witness it herself. Her testimony was secondhand hearsay. That's when Jordan tightens the vice. He brings up Tony Ornato, the White House Deputy Chief of Operations. The man Hutchinson claimed told her the story. Ornato said it never happened. Then Jordan brings up Bobby Engel, the Secret Service agent who was actually in the car. Engel said it never happened either. Both men testified that the first time they ever heard this story was when Hutchinson told it on live television. Jordan then lands a devastating blow. He asks Jack Smith whether his own investigation ever confirmed Hutchinson's claim. Smith admits it didn't. In fact, Smith concedes that a first-hand witness interviewed by his team directly contradicted her story. Then Jordan reads Smith's own sworn words back to him. Smith previously testified that Hutchinson's account was second or even third-hand hearsay, so weak that if he were a defense attorney, he would try to block her testimony entirely. Let that sink in. The star witness of the 6th of January committee wouldn't even survive a basic evidentiary challenge in court. Jordan presses further. Were you still considering putting her on the witness stand? Smith hesitates, dodges, says no final decisions were made. And that's when Jordan delivers the knockout punch. He cites reporting from the Washington Post, not conservative media, not partisan bloggers, confirming that prosecutors on Smith's own team warned Hutchinson's testimony couldn't be used at trial. And that Smith ultimately agreed. Jordan's conclusion is brutal. Democrats put a witness on national television that prosecutors knew they couldn't use in court to tell a story that key witnesses said never happened because the goal was never truth. The goal was getting Trump. Jordan closes by revealing that Hutchinson was cited 185 times in the 6th of January report, despite testimony everyone involved knew was unreliable. And that, Jordan says, tells you everything. Not about Hutchinson, but about how far Democrats and federal prosecutors were willing to go.